both Hostile and Territories of Folding from either the U of A or Corey Press. Remember, Hostile and Territories of Folding are both put up by 2 local presses. Please support these authors. Please support their presses.
I actually don't have a question, but I just want to say that I appreciate both of your readings very much, and I want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank
you. This is always super awkward. It's tough. Yeah.
Also a comment, both of you spoke of crying, and I didn't really see you crying, but I felt myself, and I have a feeling others were here. And like him, I think you are a great artist in language and in relating language to life. And I see you.
Yes.
I think we make a good pair.
Yes. I have a question.
Awesome, Kristen.
Well, it occurs to me that your book is about, is about death and suicide and touches on many themes in terms of the queer community and the transgender community. As Melissa mentioned, you're very politically active in these communities. And is there some resources you could let people know about how they can get involved in terms of supporting those communities?
I'm sure I could come up with something. Allison probably has a long list for us as well. Allison Davison, I just want to give a wave here. Allison, who's amazing and coordinates the Southern Arizona Gender Alliance at Wingspan. And I would say, if you're wanting to support the trans community, that's absolutely the first place to go. Wingspan for LGBT community. Pride Alliance here at the U of A. There's GSAs really all over Tucson. Tucson, the little beautiful pocket it is in Arizona, is lovely. So we actually have a lot of resources here. I feel like even like the Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation and other youth and homeless social service agencies are really supportive of LGBT people. And that's been really amazing. We have an LGBT Chamber of Commerce. We've got lots of stuff going on. But I'd say Wingspan and Saga are really the first places to go. Allison, do you have any other ideas?
That's great. I don't know. I didn't
I know. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Question for Heather. What led you to poetry?
Sorry. I think actually, I think mainly after my father died when I was in junior high, I started writing, but like stories. But I guess the first story I read to my mother, she liked, but then the second story I read, she said was boring. So after that, I tried. After that, I didn't write for a while, and then I was molested when I was in high school, and I really didn't know how to talk about it. So I used kind of a lot of vague imagery in order to write poetry about it. So I guess it was mainly that, and my mother not liking my short stories. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
I noticed in both of your work a lot of repetition of images, and there's so many beautiful things, like you see here, but maybe you have ears, like keep repeating over. Maybe you can speak to that sense of repetition of images and things that come up and not
For me, writing comes from a place of sound, not necessarily a place of sense first. And so I hear poems before I really know what the words are. And so in some ways it's just filling a form, like an auditory form, I guess, for me. And clearly I'm obsessed about things, so I don't know how to move through them otherwise, so I just kind of drive straight into them and stay there until I can eventually sort of spin my way out. So that's my way of dealing with repetition, or why.
Yeah, I have to say, I have a comment. No, I really appreciated your repetition. It was like, almost gave like this chant-like quality in your work. And then it was also, I felt like it's like every time you said the same thing, it got more powerful as you built on with new content in between. I like it, I personally I like it as a poetic technique, and I like to try to recreate what I'm saying, I guess, you know, like every time. Like the last poem that I wrote that had a lot of repetition was a villanelle, actually, so that was like a certain form, right, that has repetition. I think I like neat poems and short poems, as you've noticed, because I have a short attention span. And I think also repetition helps me to refocus myself too as a poet, and maybe helps the reader to focus on, you know, what I'm talking about. Thanks.
Just to add on to that, could you talk about, TC and Heather, the relationship of the body, the physical, to the act of writing?
I can go first. That's interesting for me, because I felt like for most of my life, I felt almost like I wrote without recognizing the fact that I have a body. That sounds weird, but anyway, yeah. Okay, so, but it's more recently that I've been trying to, well, like I said, like I was molested, and for years I couldn't really write a good poem about it, but more recently I've been trying to like write more about that, about my body. I don't know if that's really what you're addressing, but in terms of having a body, I felt like in the past I was really just, oh, I have all these thoughts in my head that I have to get out, but it's more recently that I'm actually even talking about, I do a lot of deep breathing to calm myself, and that's getting into my poetry, but yeah, anyway.
I actually completely relate to what you were saying in terms of, for me, I felt pretty distant from my body for, you know, quite a while. And I would say really in the last couple of years that I've come to a place where I feel like I live in my body and I kind of move through the world in my body in a way that I maybe didn't before. And so the repetition is also, I think, yes, the chant and sort of rooting it into, you know, the repetition of, you know, really basic bodily functions that, you know, sometimes I'm just like, how many times do I have to eat? Like, really? Like, I have to eat again? I have to breathe again? You know, I just slept, I have to sleep again. You know, it's just like, oh my God, like, can we move on? And so it's like, so there's this quality of just like always back in the same thing over and over that the body does. And so for me, it's also working through that with repetition.
Time for one more question.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Something that Melissa said in one of her introductions got me to thinking about how we present ourselves to the world outside of our writings, and how we ourselves are presented in our writings, and how these two presentations of ourselves can be so diametrically opposed. And I thought, I was wondering if maybe both of you might want to talk about that.
Well, it's funny, for me, that just comes up, I mean, in lots of ways. So Melissa actually asked me at the beginning, my bio is written out where it says S/HE, because in visual language, I want to represent that I'm trans and genderqueer, but there's not really language, you know, there are like alternate pronouns and things like that, but for me, they just don't kind of run off the tongue as the way that I want them to. So there are ways that I can represent my body and my experience on the page that I don't feel like I can unless, well, to be quite honest, unless we're naked together, right? And so, like, And since I'm not going to be with most of you, exactly, most of you. You know, there is a different experience for me, yeah, on the page and in person. Yeah. Go for it, Heather.
I feel like over the years, my identity in my poems and outside has actually grown really separate. I think because before, when I was in school, it's like I'm always talking about writing, my creative writing classes, and it's really intertwined with my life. But it's like now I teach at Pima, so it's like most of my work day is having this certain teacher persona, which is really about boundaries between me and the students. And so my poetry is turned into this really kind of personal like sanctuary, I guess, where I could just be me. Yeah, thank you.
So books are being sold on the side. We'll have about